Of them that.
All right, Dan.
Start again. I'll start again. Ready?
Yeah. Ready.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Bad River Valley Planning District, the steering committee meeting, I should say, the Bad River Valley Planning District Steering Committee meeting. The date is June 19th, 2025. The time is 7:02 p.m. The first item on the agenda is a call to order. Calling the meeting to order. The second agenda item is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Here, no.
Nope, okay. Hearing none, we go to public comment. Any members of the public present? Seeing none. We'll go to the fourth item on the agenda, acceptance of the minutes. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the May 15th, 2025 Mad River Valley Planning District Steering Committee meeting?
So moved.
I hear a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The abstentions, any opposed? Hearing none, the meetings are accepted. The next item on the agenda is the staff report. Take it away, Joshua and Sam.
Do you want to start
Sure.
with
Do you
those
wanna-
other items?
Yep,
that
I
we
can
chatted
definitely
about?
start.
And then I'll backfill.
So first, project that I'm gonna update you all, the Vermont 100 Active Transportation Corridor Project. So to kind of bring you up to what has happened recently and where we are now, going back a little bit in time, we had our last public meeting in the end of March. It was the presentation of the alternatives, which was essentially showing the public the alternatives that VHP had come up with as far as the potential layout or path alignment thus far in the project. The public had a chance to weigh in on which alternative they preferred, either like the minimum build scenario where not much would change, or the kind of whole kit and caboodle shared use path option. By and large, the public favored the shared use path option, and then VHP took that feedback, incorporated it into their draft scoping study. So we received the draft scoping study towards the end of April, beginning of May, and then the project advisory committee met and had a chance to talk about what they had presented to us. And the general opinion was that it was a combination of both shared use path, but also expanded road shoulders. So not a fully separate shared use path, but a combination of both shared use and wider shoulders. And the scoping study, or the advisory committee, essentially responded to VHP and said that we could always ask for, we want to ask for what we want to ask. So we're going to ask for fully shared use path with the understanding that it won't happen immediately. And down the road, there might have to be sacrifices that are made, but if we ask for less now, it'll be very hard to get more later on. So VHP incorporated that feedback and study. They passed it off to V-Trans for review, and we're still in the middle of that review process. Another round of edits from V-Trans, which will then have to be addressed in some manner or another. We don't know to exactly what extent of feedback we're going to get, but we should know in the next couple of weeks. The biggest update with the Vermont 100 Active Transportation Corridor is that over the last month or so, we've been exploring the possibility of trying to co-locate segment 1 design and construction with the construction that's going to occur with the Waitsfield Community Wastewater Project in early 2026. That would be laying the conveyance line from Kingsbury Road towards Irisville Village. But in order to do this, we would have had to expedite the review process that V-Trans typically undergoes, because we would be applying through the V-Trans bicycle and pedestrian program for federal funding. That process, as we know from the Sugarbush Access Road shared use path, is a long process. It typically takes 3 to 4 years to go from design to construction, just with things like NEPA reviews, right-of-way acquisitions, etc. We were hoping that we could expedite that just because we could realize a lot of cost savings, considering there will already be construction going on in that area, and we would just need to widen the area that was having construction done. And we learned in a meeting on May 27th that would not be possible through the bike and pedestrian program. But the good news is they said if Misha's pretty adamant that he will find a way to do it one way or another, whether it's fundraising, or whatever he comes up with. And he did ask V-Trans if there were funds to do that, would they be okay with that? And what would we need to do in order to facilitate that? They said they'd be more than okay with it. We would just have to go through the standard process of getting 1111 permits in order to do work within the state right of way. Because of our inability to apply for bike and pedestrian funding for that segment, we ended up pivoting and we worked with the town of Warren to see if they'd be open to us submitting an application on behalf of the town of Warren for segment one, which would go from essentially the village center to Riverside Park. So it'd be about 1.1 mile section of off-road path. Misha went to the select board on July 10th and June 10th. And he went with some of the members of the advisory committee. They had a presentation and they outlined their ask, which was permission to submit the grant application and also a commitment for a $400,000 match. And the select board approved that. So I'll be assisting, or we'll both be assisting Misha in the matter of path with submitting a bike and pedestrian grant that will be due on July 11th. We're also going to be helping submit a smaller grant. It's actually a grant from T-Mobile called the Hometown Grant. And that would be used to just improve existing sections of Mad River Path. They offer grants of up to $50,000, so it's smaller scale funding, but we worked with L&D Landworks in Waitsfield to get budget estimates for the existing sections of the Mad River Path from Warren to just about Waitsfield past to the Yes Tomorrow section of Mad River Path. And we're gonna figure out which one of those would make the most sense given our segment one application to bike and ped program, and also given the $50,000 limitations of this particular grant. The next update is in regard to the Sugarbush Access Road shared use path. So I was asked by our municipal project manager, Brian Birch, about a month ago to talk with some representatives from the Bridges Resort. They just wanted to identify some concerns that they had. Mainly, most of them are small concerns, identifying areas that are prone to drainage issues already, that they definitely don't want to make any worse through the course of this project. And also some things like where we currently have the path laid, we indicate that a sign would need to be moved, but that sign is actually going to be moved right in the middle of a bunch of other stuff. So we need to find a new way to lay out things like, flag poles, gardens, nothing major. The only larger issue that they flagged was there's two culverts. One that is currently under the Sugarbush Access Road that was originally going to be addressed as part of the Rosita's Workforce Housing Project. That project is currently taking a bit of a pause, so that is the culvert replacement will also be taking a pause just because it's a pretty large project. And then there's a secondary culvert which goes actually underneath the Bridges driveway. And when I was talking with a member of their infrastructure committee at that site visit, they indicated a desire to have that culvert replaced as part of this project. Initially, it seemed that wouldn't really be possible just due to the funding source and also the fact that it's kind of somewhat removed from where we'd actually be doing the work. But I wasn't actually at this most recent project team meeting. I was out, but on June 9th, there was a meeting with the municipal project manager, V-Trans, and our engineers. And it seems like there might be a path forward to both get the temporary construction easements that we need, but also have the Bridges be able to replace their culvert by essentially using the cost for us to purchase the easements from them. We wouldn't be doing the work for them, but they could ask for what it costs to replace the culvert. The grant would pay them that, and then they could use that money as they wish. So seems like there might be a path forward. That's a bit of an update from what's currently in the staff report, but I found that out after sending this out. Another item on the staff report we wanted to touch base on is the Mad Bus performance report. So we've talked about this particular item in the last staff report where the Valley Floor has been underperforming for a number of years, and V-Trans expects Green Mountain Transit to kind of handle that issue. And I think the last update was it would need to be addressed through a combination of financial contributions, service cuts to underperforming midday runs, and increasing ridership or kind of changing the routing configurations. Our last meeting was on May 20th with Sugarbush, Green Mountain Transit, and the Mad River Valley Planning District. And what we saw by looking at some of the stop level data was that the midday runs between like 9 and 10 and 3 and 4 only had between 1 and 4 riders on a given trip. And GMT also noted that the Valley Floor route is really primarily used by Sugarbush employees than skiers or visitors to inns and lodges, and Shaw's is one of the major destinations. And the kind of consensus was, well, from a number standpoint, cutting midday service makes sense. It also provides a little bit of unpredictability, and it might make people less inclined to use the bus because they go to a stop and then the bus doesn't show up one time. They're not probably going to be likely to go try and do that again. So we discussed, in lieu of that, we discussed strategies of how could we increase ridership to a point where maybe that doesn't need to happen. Some of the ideas that we threw around were trying to improve service to Mount Ellen by either using auxiliary lots, that maybe the bus could act as like a secondary shuttle, maybe parking at the Rosita's Law or some of the other lots around. But Joel mentioned there are some logistical difficulties from mountain operations standpoint. They already have a lot of what are those sugar shuttles going around, so it might not be the perfect solution. But just trying to continue to work with GMT to see how we can maintain the level of service that we would like to see while also meeting the constraints that they're under from V-Trans. And we are hoping to have V-Trans or Green Mountain Transit come to a presentation possibly in, okay, so it's in September.
That was the latest one down.
So not
We
as soon as
wanted them
would
at
like
this
it, but,
meeting and then it got pushed and wait, that's the
Mhm.
current. We'll
do
see if we can move it up.
you want to take it off from here?
Sure. Thank you, Sam.
No problem.
Couple of things real quickly, Wadesfield Community Wastewater Project. Things are rolling very much in final design. 60% design plans were completed recently and submitted to different state regulatory entities like Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, right away, V-Trans, historic preservation, all require review and sign-offs on plans, and incorporation of previous dialogues with them, with each of those different groups, as well as some of the different funding agencies. So we have 60% design plans. They're in good shape, continuing every 2 weeks. We're essentially getting 62%, you know, it's continuing to be updated. A lot of the work right now is focusing on funding, and this I identified a certain amount of detail in the staff report, but the main part is by early July, by mid-July at the latest, we should hear from 3 different funding entities. 2 construction funding requests of $1 million by the end of this month, and then the larger amount, which is USDA Rural Development, anticipating hearing that by mid-July. So I think once we hear from those the potential funding, that's going to help paint a picture of what our opportunity is that's in front of us, and then anticipate some more in-depth discussions with the select board on a handful of things about strategy and policy and just getting feedback and direction. So I'd anticipate a lot of that movement happening post the funding piece, so August, September. So there's a lot more to come, but like I said, design is on point. The expectation, the contract is by January to be at 100% design, and then move into the bidding part of the process for construction to commence in 2026. In the recreation front, I just wanted to highlight, there's this thing in here about the Vermont Local Level Outdoor Recreation Economic Impact Project. This is a project being done, directed through the state to specifically work with communities and create tools for communities to assess and leverage economic recreation potential. So essentially analyzing economic impact of recreation within communities. And this is a project that I 2 months ago am on a small statewide committee reviewing the products to be completed by the end of the summer. Part of the project is to have pilot communities, a variety of different types of communities to sort of run through this product. And Waitsfield was selected as a pilot community and sort of, the communities are everything from those who have no recreation economy, but want to those that are destination resort recreation communities, and Waitsfield fits in more in that category. And there's a kickoff meeting with the consultants on that project next week. So excited to be able to support
What's an
that.
example of a tool that's
Um,
like a top of mind thing?
Yeah, so specifically, what is the economic impact of this trail?
Okay.
Right, we have this trail, okay, great. What's the economic impact, the primary, secondary, and tertiary impacts of having a trail? And we did a project called the MRV Moves Active Transportation Plan that took place in 2016. One of the components of that plan, there are lots of components of that plan. There's a map, there identifies all the different trail segments that we have, and then identifies where are the gaps, and things like the active transportation corridor is one of those gaps that was identified through that process. But one of the things that plan also did, in addition to like, what does the community want and what does that future look like, but also did an economic impact analysis and looked at the Blueberry Lake trails, for instance, and said, okay, so these are the visitations at Blueberry Lake. This is the spending profile of users based on a variety of different data points. And then they utilize InPlan modeling software to model what is the economic impact. And so essentially taking that, which we're one of the few communities that have a municipal or a community-wide understanding of our economic impact, and trying to create a tool that can be used by any community. It's, lower the bar of that understanding. So I think it's I think it's a great opportunity, and I also love so often, so much of that work that was done before was the planning district's involvement sort of leading, and this is, while I'm involved and while we're involved in this project, it's a municipal involvement directly in this product. So I'm excited to see what comes of it. The 2020 under the transportation, maybe it's recreation transportation section. I just highlighted a handful of things from the 2025 legislative session about bicycles and pedestrians, specifically bike use of pedestrian signals, definitions of bike signals, so on and so forth. So these small but important tweaks that came out of the last session. I just wanted to bring to people's attention. We had a great event last Wednesday, June 11th, called MRV Flood Resilience Panel, Learning from Neighbors. Thank you, Dan, for being in attendance. It was a gathering and a collaboration between Friends of the Mad River and the Planning District to have a panel discussion exploring flood resilience in neighboring communities. We had representatives from Plainfield, from Waterbury, and from Montpelier, who shared their experiences from the 2023 and 2024 floods. We had about 30 to 35 folks in attendance. Is fairly small, but it's on MRE TV, and the link for that is in the staff report. And it was, I thought I learned a lot, hearing from other communities, and it was fairly informal. It wasn't like sit down and here's a PowerPoint presentation. It was more of a dialogue. But it was also great to sort of see how the themes and the experiences from the three different communities overlapped, and the ways in which their communities sort of stood up in response to these challenges, and then the things that they're doing that are continuing to move forward, like a long-term committee, and different, there's different, each community sort of has a different structure. Plainfield was really interesting because Plainfield has, what did he say? There's 4 total staff for the town of Plainfield, in comparison to Waterbury or Montpelier, who have paid staffs now that are continuing their projects forward. And Plainfield is much smaller. And Plainfield, did he say that they lost through the last flood almost 50% of their residential buildings in the main core of their downtown, either lost or in the process of a buyout, something like a good number of properties. And also those buyouts are all on hold, and there's a lot of question marks. So anyway, that was really great. Somewhat related that I wanted to mention, Peter Colgan, from Facein, who is on the Matter Valley Rotary. I worked with him in 2024 after the Facein flooding events, and Peter and the Rotary are stepping up to organize a valley-wide emergency volunteer management response process. And so the Rotary and Peter are in collaboration with each of the town's emergency management directors, and so it was great to learn a little bit of what they've learned in the last year and the structure that they're in the process of setting up. So how we doing?
Can I interject for a second, John?
Yeah, right ahead.
One of the things I took away, or everyone made pretty clear at that presentation was, that the state is great at like an immediate response. I think it's probably your experience or all our experiences, but down the road, the rescue, the state's great at, rescue repair, but the long-term recovery is a real challenge that the state struggles to provide. And then I thought, to follow up on Joshua's point about Plainfield, yeah, how for a small town to try to access FEMA and other funds is just incredibly challenging. Just the amount of hours required
To navigate.
And the expertise to navigate. I probably thanks to MRVPD, we're better positioned, I'm guessing, but it just sounds like whether it was Montpelier or Waterbury or Plainfield, it just seemed like a tremendous, the road back to recovery is a long and arduous one, was my takeaway.
Yeah.
And to let the systems that you've built up in an emergency then go away and have to try to recreate them from scratch again which some of the towns went through, we won't need this again for 500 years, and then next year. So I think they're moving towards a more kind of permanent standing committees. Is that?
Yeah,
Those were my.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree. And then a couple of really quick things, thank you, Dan. Specifically like funding opportunities that I just want to highlight. USDA agricultural marketing grants, everything from farmers market promotion programs to local food promotion programs to different regional partnerships. There's a lot of detail in the staff report on that. Also, on a different topic, historic preservation, the 2025 Downtown and Village Tax Credit Program. So for fiscal year 26, there's $3 million in state income tax credits from federal and state tax credit to stimulate private investment and great jobs. Things like building safety, general rehabilitation, code compliance, flood mitigation upgrades, exterior facade improvements, specifically for the historic village of Waitsfield and Warren. So Warren Village and Waitsfield Village, within the designated villages or the historic villages, this funding is available. So if someone, I mean, this is not just primarily, these are mostly used for private properties. So if there's a private property that is looking for support for facade improvements or other building upgrades, this is a really great program. And the contact information, or at least the email is there. And the last thing I want to highlight, I identified some of the changes that have taken place regarding the Vermont State Designation Program. So designated downtowns, villages, NDAs, neighborhood development areas. And that program's in the process of a changeover from one structure to a new structure, and that's detailed in the staff report. It also speaks to what they call legacy designation applications. So essentially, those who want to get in at the last bit of the existing before they switch to the new one, for which Warren is looking for an NDA, a legacy designation for its neighborhood development area for Warren Village. And Sam and I met with Ruth, the zoning administrator in Warren, in middle May, and had a great conversation with her, and are in the process of drafting an application to be reviewed by the town, and a pre-application meeting with the HCD, Department of Housing Community Development, to be submitted in August, for review in September by those folks. So, we're moving forward.
Any questions for Joshua or Sam?
And we have,
Well, thank you very
we
much.
yapped a lot at you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a very good report.
Great.
So we're on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 6, new business. It's divided into two portions. One is conservation recreation visioning, CRV 2.0. We have 30 minutes. And we have Phil and Laura. What's the best way to? Maybe.
Yeah, so did you connect on this? Oh, Sam's already on. Well, I can.
I can move too. I think that's what's easiest here. As far as getting you guys at the table.
Everything's easier.
Yeah. the two work actually, Mike.
Or is she remote connected?
I think she wanted me to, Laura, you wanted me to do the slides, right?
I'll slide over.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great.
Do you want,
yeah.
do you want to be next to Sam or is that?
That works.
I think-
Okay.
I think that's just- Thank you. Nice to see you.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
This sweaty day.
Yeah.
Change.
So I'll just jump right in, but I'm Laura Arneson, the Executive Director of the Recreation District, and
Bill Huffman, longtime member of the Waitsfield Conservation Commission. And together, we've been the co-chairs of the Conservation Recreation Visioning Project over the course of the last 3 years,
a long 3 years it was.
but
Well,
a productive 3 years.
Yes, very much so. Because we had 15-ish partners through this, the conservation commissions, Friends of the Mad River Path, all sorts of, other trails groups and things like that. So you probably know a lot about CRV at this point, so we have about 10 or so slides that we'll go through, the first couple of them pretty fast. But we want to talk about the first part of the grant. Well, the first part of CRV was covered by the VORAC grant, which we got the largest grant in the 2022 cycle. And one of the reasons I believe we got such a big grant was because there were 5 pillars for VORAC. One of them was stewardship, conservation, and also economic development. So we hit all those 5 pillars, and CRV was a major one. And the state hoped that what we developed would be something they could roll out to other towns. So we're pretty proud of that, and I'm in the process of doing the very last reimbursement. I only have $20,000 more to get back from the state, and then also a big report and things like that. But so we were calling that first part that was VORAC funded, CRV 1.0, and now we're moving into CRV 2.0. But it is, a collaboration to balance recreation and sustainable ecology in our beautiful valley.
Could I,
Yeah.
we have one member who considers acronyms a microaggression.
Okay,
To the extent possible, if we could,
conservation and recreation visioning instead of, okay, sure.
at least the first time. Bill.
Okay, sure. All right, thank you.
It is that hard practice for me.
Yeah.
You're down here.
But these were the various
it's good.
components of that $408,000 grant. And, the Welcome Center is now, the Chamber of Commerce is at the Rec Hub. We call it the Welcome Center. When we're talking about the indoor Chamber of Commerce, we call it the Rec Hub, the whole thing outside, which includes the beautiful bridge over the Mill Brook, a bike and pedestrian bridge, which connects to the Howe Block, which makes a lot of trails accessible to downtown, and that was the economic development part of it. Looking for a restaurant at that building, and maybe they're gonna do they are brewing, but they're gonna maybe have a outdoor beer garden at some point. The ideas like that to really, bring people in. We had to do crossings over Route 100. The path, the downtown connector path is, it was our second choice. We were not able to get the first choice through, but we did it. And then we have conservation and recreation visioning.
And can I just add, Laura, I think that, the conservation recreation visioning part of it was just to reinforce a really important component of this overall package, which was otherwise focused really on trying to enhance outdoor recreation for all the benefits that that provides and that we all value so deeply in this community. But recognizing that I think something that's been a longstanding value here in the valley about this notion of trying to move forward with outdoor recreation, among other aspects of our presence here in the valley, in a way that upholds the environmental integrity of the valley as well. And so I think that was bringing those two things together in this component of this overall big package for VORAC was something that really distinguished it. So.
Yes. And we had many funding partners. We had 55,000 from the VORAC grant. We actually turned that into 60,000 because one of the other categories didn't need their full funding. And the bridge actually came in under. It was a $225,000 piece of the grant. But anyway, so we got the 60,000 from VORAC, and then these other groups, contributed between $2,000 and $10,000.
And those are all specific to the conservation and recreation
Right.
visioning component of the overall package. So I think it points to the way that this idea of the visioning project resonated with a bunch of different funders, both here in the valley and more broadly statewide. And again, with the idea of the hope that it would be a value not just to us here in the valley, but to maybe as something of a model for folks elsewhere in Vermont and potentially beyond.
So our structure was a steering committee with these members, and then 2 working groups, one for trails and recreation that I led, and one for ecological integrity that was first led by Corey Miller and then by Ira Shadis. And then we had a small group that was a leadership team. And, we met, we had a charge for the steering committee that we worked on in summer 2022. And then 2023, we did a lot of the committee, the working groups, just so that we could build consensus among our working group before we came together as a larger group to try and come up with some of the documents that were deliverables for the VORAC grant. And you'll see those a few slides from now.
And actually, if you can go back to the
Yeah.
steering committee, I would just add on that I think if you look at the organizations as well as the individuals, but you can really get a sense of the breadth of the entities that were involved. And it's most, if not quite all, I think, of the major environmentally oriented or ecologically oriented entities in the valley, and likewise on the outdoor recreation front. And it's the first time, I think, that broadly representative group like that focused on these two things in tandem has ever come together in the valley. It's all been part of the mix for a long time, but this was really the first time to bring those diverse perspectives and interests together to try to build relationships and find common ground and sort of chart a path forward together.
In addition to this group, there were another 5 or 8 people that started with us, had to leave for various reasons, and then other people stepped up. So it really was more than 20 people involved in a lot of volunteer time. So we thank everybody for their many contributions. It was a big lift, as you'll see, with the documents and agreements we created. So these were the 3 of the major outcomes or deliverables for the VORAC grant. And right now they reside on the rec district website, probably to morph into the planning district website. But on our rec district website, if you go over to the second one, Trails and Conservation, the drop down is that link, and it takes you to a page where you see all of these items. The first one was, I think, one of the most exciting things that we did. We hired Arrowwood, and they did an online mapping tool. First, they took the scientific information existing with the state and other studies. And they came up with a list of 13 sensitive things to avoid if you're planning trails. Things, like bear habitat, things, obviously wetlands, things like that. But some of them were representative of many different other things. So it's a really great list, and it's on our website as well. So that private landowner or an organization can say, I want to trail through this area for this reason, but if I could avoid these 13 things, and then there are layers on these maps when you go to the online mapping tool that allows you to drill down and add a layer and say, I want to avoid this, I want to avoid that, or see it all together. So we are hoping that it's a tool that will be used broadly throughout the valley. And one of our goals in CRV 2.0 is to either do a toolkit or have a reference group. We want to get it out to private landowners, to, planning commissions. We want everybody to use this if they can. So it's a great product for us, and we'll update it, year to year. And Phil is going to speak to the second item.
Yeah, maybe before I do, I just add on the online mapping tool and this opportunity areas map idea that, so there's all of these ecological layers of those 13 features. And then there's also the footprint of existing recreation trails in the valley. So you can see sort of how those lay out. Those are the ones that are sort of publicly known. There are lots more trails we know that are out there that are not publicly known, which is fine. That's landowner prerogative. But anyway, so let's give you a good glimpse. And, we developed this in the context of this project focused on recreation and ecological integrity. But I think the data layers that are in there, the information is really valuable for other applications potentially as well. So it could feed into the work of planning commissions or the DRBs with respect to other forms of development, and trying to just sort of have access to the best information that we know of, that's sort of readily available to help to inform thinking going forward, and how different forms of human presence and development on the landscape is cited.
And our goal from the beginning was to try and see what scientific information was out there, things that were known or studied about the impacts of recreation on the environment, and not just to, go with what everybody thinks. So Meredith Naughton came and spoke to us at one point. It was open to the public. And, we're really trying to use scientific stuff so that we can, cite the best trails in the valley possible, and leave, nature as untouched as, or without impact as possible.
Great, so I can pick it up then on the second of the deliverables, and this was something that we had committed to in the original proposal to VORAC, and that we all felt, I think, from the get-go that was really important, was an articulation of shared vision, shared values, and shared guiding principles for the future. It's not the sort of sexiest part of the project maybe, but I think it's one of the most critical outcomes, and it provides a really important foundation for ongoing collaboration among all the interests that have been at the table, but hopefully the rest of the community as well. So this is the only hard copy I have. I can pass it around if you want. I'd encourage you to go take a look at it when you have a moment on the Recreation District website. But so it's we spent a lot of time on this as a group, really hashing out what ought to be included in here and what everyone felt comfortable with. It was a great example of a lot of give and take, and that I've heard an expression about in a room of people who are working together on sometimes the smartest person in the room is the room. I think that's actually what happened in this case. That the end product is as good as it is because of the input of really everyone who was around the table. So it serves as kind of as a foundation of agreement for ongoing efforts, and we've talked about it as like a, sort of like a informal constitution almost of, that tries to capture our collective thinking about this idea of the interplay between outdoor recreation and ecological integrity, and what do we need to be doing? What's the vision we want to carry forward? What do we need to do to try to achieve that balance over time? And I think really important to it that's woven in, it was a part of the process, but we feel it very strongly going forward. It is the fundamental importance of ongoing collaboration and dialogue, and trying to, that stems from relationships and communication and trust and whatnot, and trying to be sharing ideas and information sooner rather than later, so that we don't have something get partway, too far down the road with other people not being aware of it, and then that drawing some kind of reaction, whereas if there were conversation happening early on, we could work through it and use the science and other information that we have to inform things, whatnot. So I won't take the time to go through this in great detail. I just want to point out there in the shared vision part of it, there are 3 parts. One speaks to the sort of degree of peril that our environment is in, and with the loss of biodiversity of native species and with climate change. So kind of focusing on the ecological side. A second one talks about our inextricable connection to and interdependence on the environment, but also how fundamentally we value outdoor recreation in the natural environment here as a key part of why many of us live here, and why many people come here, and how important that is to our economy. And then this notion of sort of acting with intention, which relates to collaboration and trying to work together on these things. The shared values, we talk about valuing nature, valuing recreation in nature, and also collaboration. So it's really kind of a peeling the onion another layer on some of those key themes. And then there are 10 different guiding principles that we identified that sort of group loosely under collaboration, science, trust, public engagement on the one hand, and then also diversity, equity, access, and inclusion in the outdoors. So these are things that we all bought in on. There's a lot of substance to all of this. And again, I really encourage you to take the time to read it. But the group, so all 15 people who were at the table on behalf of our respective entities that we were representing, signed off on this statement, which I think is, not insignificant. And again, we really see it as a critical platform for the work moving forward. And this what we hope will be a, long-term ongoing dialogue and collaborative effort.
And a second document that was signed off on by all 15 of us representing our organizations was the Recreational Trail Development Process Guide. And that's a shorter document, it's 3 pages, but it just gives a basic outline, guidelines and practices for trails, initial planning, site assessment, design review and approval. It's a nice outline for somebody who might be thinking about a trail on their own land, or definitely for, a trails group. Also has a section about construction and maintenance and trail use. And again, it's a good starting point for all of us to have agreed upon, so that as we move forward and additional trails are developed in the valley, there's a common starting point. So that's another important document that is on the website. And so our next steps, we're in a transition of handing this over to Sam, is going to be the administrator for conservation and recreation visioning. We had a paid for administrator, Emily Friedman, through the VORAC grant. I've used more than half of my time over the past 3 years for conservation and recreation visioning. So the rec district is excited to have me back at my regular job. And so what we decided, and there was, so much time from all these volunteers, that we decided quarterly meetings would be the best. We'll stay in touch, and there'll be an ongoing process for shared work priorities. We're in the process of setting up the first one, and after we get our sea legs, we'll have them open to the public. But it really is a meeting for the trail groups, the environmental groups to keep each other informed, work through different projects. And over the 3 years of conservation and recreation visioning, many good ideas came up, but we didn't have the bandwidth to tackle them because we had the deliverables for the grant, the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaboration Grant, VORAC. So we.
Nice job.
You're welcome. So, we.
Use an acronym. That's
So-
a mouthful.
Okay, so anyway, I got that out,
That's
but,
great.
so over time, we kept a running list of these, great ideas, but that we could tackle over time. And so toward the end of our formal meetings this past winter and early spring, different people volunteered to be part of different efforts. So Ira and Sam volunteered to be part of the roadshow that we're gonna take to, all the boards and Rotary and anybody who will have us, so that we have a real common denominator in the community about, what this is, because it was always designed as an ongoing project. It was never designed as just for the grant period. So we have a couple of great things happening and things that we want feedback on. And this is more about the structure, but we want to do it, continue the momentum. It was always designed as a project without an end, so this is just the second part of it. And the quarterly meetings, people will be able to sign up and say, I want to talk more in depth with the full group about a certain topic. So, but we have a couple of things that are representative of what we're working on. We have a list of like 15 or 20 things that different people have volunteered to take on, but these are some of the big ones. And we had a 4th community forum over time. We've had 4 different community forums that we had the public at. The most recent one, we didn't have a great attendance. We had a lot of content. And one of the things we wanted to get was feedback on some of these near-term priorities. So, would ask all of you to send thoughts in about this. But one thing we're doing is hoping to develop a code of ethics for Mad River Valley recreation users. And we're looking at a bunch of different codes of ethics around the country, around Vermont. And so that's one thing we want to have happen, in the next year, but because we have different user groups, we can't just be like the Kingdom Trails, because we're not all mountain bikers, right? We have a lot of different user groups, and we have different trail networks, and so it's complicated, but it's going to be really good for all of us. The other one I mentioned briefly before is that the Conservation, Recreation Visioning Outreach really wants private landowners to use this mapping tool and be aware of it and ask us for guidance or questions, because we got a lot of experts among this group of people. So that's another area that we want to further. We all want to stay informed about the ecological health of the valley and, continue to gather science-based information and, how it intersects, trails and the recreational infrastructure. So, that's kind of ongoing work. And then one of the topics that has come up, so often is, the ecological effects of dogs on trails. But that was not part of this grant work. So now, we feel like we want to get feedback from our community. One of the challenges with that is that 2 of the towns have a leash law, 2 of the towns have just, keep your dog under voice control, which is pretty darn hard. But, and then people are on trails, you don't actually know what town you might be in, a trail crosses so there is a lot to it, but we don't want people to think we're ignoring it. We want to further it. Mad River Path has put signs up about there is no poop fairy. We're trying to address the dog issue. One of the reasons that I was heavily involved with the building of the dog park was to see if we could take pressure off dogs on trails by having a dog park where people could go. That was, one of the reasons for the dog park. There's a lot of others, but it's a topic that a lot of people care about, so, we want to be sensitive to what our community needs. You have other things to add, and this is just a short list of things we're starting on, there's many other things we're working on.
Yeah, I think I just add a couple of points. One is that we've got questions in the past over the last couple of years about like, so is conservation recreation visioning a regulatory thing? Do you guys have any power? And the answer to that is it has been and will continue to be absolutely not. This is just a collaborative, a group coming together to try to gather and share information and ideas and to work together towards good outcomes and to try to foster that within the community at large, I would say. So with respect to trails on private lands or on public lands for that matter, this group doesn't have any authority. We can hopefully maybe encourage people to look at the information that's available and to use this new trail development process of sort of best practices and ideas and whatnot, but ultimately, it's not, it's under only existing authorities, basically. And same for town lands, state lands, federal lands, that those are, under the jurisdiction of the managing entities on behalf of the public. And there was another thought I had, but it flew out of my head, so.
I'll bail you out.
Thanks.
Okay, question,
Good time.
yeah.
We continue to wrestle with exactly what you're talking about in Facein. Obviously, the visioning CRV is not, you have no regulatory powers. The towns do. And we're in the process of Facein of suggesting some edits and changes to, and updates to our land use regulations, and one of the things we keep coming back to is trail building on private property. And I feel like I've just spent like the last 13 months dealing with this virtually every one of our planning commission meetings. There's one member of our commission in particular who's made it their real pet issue. And wants absolutely no town regulation in any way, shape, or form for what a person does on their land in terms of trail building. And so how do we strike a balance there? What do you see as the town's role in trying to encourage? I mean, we see like the balance, the trick I see, and I'm new to this, granted. The trick I see with towns and land use regulations is they serve a dual function of sort of educating community members and people that are interested in how to what they have to do with their land. I mean, educating them when they're gonna build a new structure, or whether they're gonna do anything with their land. We wanted to be able to turn to the land use regulations and have some guidance on how to do it responsible. At the same time, if they do it wrong, your ZA needs to have the ability to enforce and regulate somebody that comes in with a bulldozer and wreaks havoc with their neighbors, because they've built let's say a pump track or a motocross track or something, for example. And so how do you strike that balance? I mean, I understand coming from the West, most recently, there's a real hands-off, it's my land, I can do whatever the hell I want with it. And there's a strong history of that in Vermont as well. The Libertarian streak in this state is powerful. But particularly in Facein, I see it as super important that we try to encourage people to build trails responsibly. Because we see what happens with just a little bit of, not a little bit, But with what happened with Dunbar Hill and the flooding, not quite a year ago. So what do you see, how do we strike that balance?
Well, I think one of the things we wanna do is share broadly with private landowners, this work we've been doing for the 3 years and that trail process guide, and we wanna make
Yeah, I
it
think this is
easy.
brilliant, I just pulled it up, seems awesome.
Thank you. We wanna make it easy for them, and that's why one of the ideas that's been, floating about is having a toolkit for private landowners and also having, a person they can go to as a resource to say, okay, I'll sit with you and we'll look at your land on this Arrowwood map and we'll say, how you could cite it so it's better for the environment, or, other professionals that could get involved, because, we do have a history, a tradition in the US of private land is private land, right? But I think we're all seeing that, between climate change and, other, development pressures, everything else, that, we've got to also look after nature because it doesn't have its own voice unless, we do that. So.
Exactly, but I
a-
mean, we can,
It's tricky.
we can encourage people to do that, but there's gonna be. A lot of there's gonna be like resistance, like screw that, like, that's just the government getting up in my business. And telling me, what I can and cannot do.
Yeah.
So that's where you need to stick. And, how do you give the town and your ZA a big enough stick to get these people to do the right thing?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for you.
I don't know,
I think that I would echo what Laura said, and that, and it sounds like you're headed in the same direction about it, starting with trying to do as much outreach and education and encouragement as
Yeah.
possible. And I think that, if, from my perspective, it would be great if each of the towns, sort of endorsed what the work of CRV and maybe the planning district as well. But help to raise the visibility around the mapping tool and the guidance document and this shared vision, which, is just from a group of 15 people, but there's a lot of good stuff in there that, hopefully people can take to heart. And that can help to move things in the right direction. I realize like that's not gonna work in every case. And I think it's another really important point is like that we've tried to emphasize over the course of the project is that this is not trying to put the brakes on trails for various uses. It's trying to really encourage trails to be sited and constructed and maintained in the most well-informed, sort of environmentally sensitive way. And there are lots of great, best practices for designing the trail to reduce erosion, but there's less maybe awareness or understanding of like, what does that translate to in terms of how to site a trail to minimize impacts on wildlife? It's a work in progress, trying to gather the information. But I think if there's an effort to try to raise the visibility on all of this sort of stuff from the different communities in the valley and the other, different entities in the valley, that could be a start. And then, where does it translate into, if something is done that, sort of crosses a line, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Or how do you write?
so
it into
this,
the
our
boundaries?
journey began with a broken link in our land use regulations. It linked to a New York State, parks website that no longer existed in terms of some guidance for building a mountain bike trailer. So anyway, so we finally agreed to revise the link and send people to an A&R page that has, it's a great resource page. It's like one-stop shopping if you're, for VAST, for equestrians, for mountain bikes, for everything. And now I'm gonna be that person who's gonna go back to the commission and say, we need to incorporate, we need to direct people to your document and to your guidelines and best practices. Because that's fantastic. You know, the problem though is if somebody ignores it and they do something that is clearly not, you know, not utilizing best practices and ignore everything, erosion, wildlife, you name it. And it has an impact on their neighbor, and their neighbor then goes to the, you know, calls Chuck, and then Chuck calls, you know, Jason, and, you know, what can Jason do about it?
And when people
I
are,
mean, this, I
yeah,
guess my part of my issue is like, you know, we love our acronyms, we love all this shared vision, but like where the rubber hits the road, like what is all this, what does this mean? Like in a real life situation?
I mean, I would say part of what it means is that most of the trail development is not happening by private property owners and private property. Like, well, as far as the amount of use, most of it's happening by organizations. And this focus of this work so far hasn't been in the regulatory realm. It's been on bringing the partners together to build that foundation of trust and shared understanding, and recognition to sort of build what these goals are.
Yeah,
And so like, you know, there are obviously, there is a municipal opportunity, right, in a regulatory realm, but that hasn't been the charge of the work. But the work itself, I think, provides that foundation and shared understanding of the things that we're trying to value, right? Regulations, good regulations come from a good understanding.
sure.
And I think this work has provided that good understanding and a foundation
Yeah.
if municipalities want to go there. And that balance of the sort of, as you described before, the sort of libertarian and, you know, the us, the individual versus the collective we, that is the challenge of municipalities. That is the role of the planning commission to suss that out for the town. That is the role of the select board to approve or deny, or sometimes the public to vote on, to sort of find that balance.
Right.
And I think the intention of this work hasn't been focusing on the regulatory, you know, but looking at what the work that's been done so far and the document that lays out the recommendation on to how to develop trails. I think it has the considerations. If municipalities want to go into the regulatory realm, because as you laid out, right, I mean, the stick doesn't exist and the teeth aren't there.
Yeah.
And if that's the persuasion of the town, I think that opportunity is there. It's, I believe, enabled by the state legislature for municipalities to regulate such uses, but.
I just see a future where there's more, you know, I think that this next generation of landowners coming in and whatnot, are gonna be more inclined to, you know, build a mountain bike trail on their, you know, 10-15 acre parcel, or they're gonna, you know, they're gonna build a motocross track, or they're gonna do this kind of stuff, and it's not gonna be quite as organic as it's been in the past. You know?
I think those are good points, interesting points. But I'm looking at the clock and I.
I'm sorry.
No.
I hijacked.
No, I think they're good points, and I think, it's probably a good topic.
Yeah.
To think about regulatory towns, tools towns can use. But, is there more of your presentation, or is that?
yeah. We,
Are there any,
questions?
are there
If
any
people-
questions?
people have
We have time for a few
Sure.
questions. Any questions, folks?
I-
Well, Paul will take, I think we should take up the question of regulatory tools at a meeting. I think that's interesting. And if you guys have thoughts on that, we'd love for you to be a part of that discussion and think about what regulatory tools you might recommend.
Well, you're planning on coming to Facein, and we're gonna schedule that, right?
There will be
Yeah.
a version of this for Facein as part of this roadshow where we're
Awesome.
sort of making the rounds. So
And it might be good to have a sort of follow-up in advance of that presentation.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. I'm not setting the agendas anymore, I've been proposed, but, you know.
Thank you.
And can I just add one point in closing,
Sure.
which is just, Laura alluded to the handoff. This has been under the umbrella and the leadership of the Recreation District as the administrative and fiscal home for the conservation recreation visioning component and of the overall big grant from the state. And that's been invaluable, having the rec district be willing to play that role. And I think it's also critical and really much appreciated that the planning district is now stepping forward and taking on the sort of umbrella role for this effort going forward, and with Sam dedicating some time in the midst of a lot of other responsibilities and things that I know you guys are all juggling and thinking about, but so just to, express some appreciation for that. I think it's really critical to have, a logical big vision entity, that's providing the home, the umbrella, and I think the rec district has been a great option for that, and I think the planning district is a really suitable, follow-on, so thank you for making that possible.
And I think it was July of last year was the last time the two of you came and presented on where the project was. At that time, there was a steering committee meeting. And made the request of the planning district being involved, going forward. So, through these conversations and such, this is where we're headed, and it's, from my perspective, this is such exciting, great work done through a lot of time and energy and dedication and guidance that you all have provided, and thinking of where, the Trails Collaborative first meeting in 2009 that I participated in and helped put together, and there were efforts of some sort prior to the MRV Moves Active Transportation Plan, to where these documents are, to the challenges with dogs, and how that was sort of on the shoulders of the Path Association for a long time. And sort of seeing this structure and the focus and the work that's been done, I think as a community, we owe a lot of debt to those that were leading the charge. So thank you.
And we started this saying, it's a continuum. We're all recreationists and we all love the environment. And so we gotta look after that balance.
Well, many, many thanks. I think, I'll speak frankly, I hadn't really thought about. I should have, but I haven't really thought about what role the MRVPD, by taking on this project, what does that mean, particularly for Sam, but in general for all of us? What does that mean? What should we be thinking about? We don't have time to talk about that tonight, but I think Joshua and Sam, that should be on an upcoming agenda, is like what, and maybe that, or, yeah, I'm not sure what the form is yet, but it would be great to understand how the MRVPD should carry this forward. Like, what in transitioning this to us? Maybe Sam has this all in his head. He may well do. I don't yet. So but I think we should discuss that, what that means. So we don't want to say, yeah, we're taking it on board. Thanks, great work. And, and we're not gonna pick it up again for 5 years.
Yeah, and
So,
Sam has been at our most recent meetings, and I think, Sam and I have had some emails and conversations, and we're here as background and assets to tap, when questions come up, but it really is driven by the organizations that were in CRB, and I think Sam has a great idea of how to move it forward,
Okay.
and
so we'll
I
look
think we're
forward to Sam, guiding us.
And you will be doing the presentations to the towns.
to all the time, right?
Yes, that's in your plans.
Right,
now.
and I will put a plug in for July 10th. We've reserved this room to do a big presentation. We hope either people in person or online, because there are a lot of boards that are hard to get a date for, and the more people that are participating, see the presentation, the better. So, we will do those individual presentations, but we did think it would be a good idea to have one central one that, if you miss your board's meeting, you could go to that one and see the presentation. So.
Well, thank you both very, very much.
Thank you.
I'll just add on
Yeah.
that, like, from a town perspective, representing the Waitsfield Conservation Commission, I've been thinking that ideally we would have a joint meeting of the Select Board, the Planning Commission, the Conservation Commission, and the DRB, with everyone from all those boards all in the same room at the same time,
That would be great.
to get a download and for that to happen in each of the towns,
Mhm.
and including Moortown. And Duxbury's been on the fringe, but they're, an
Mhm.
important part too.
Mhm.
The feasibility of that is really challenging. So maybe the July 10th meeting can be a little bit of a bridge, but also know that, we're wanting to have these kinds of conversations with the board, all of the boards from all of the towns, as well as all of the other entities that are relevant and, sort of thinking about or interwoven with this sort of stuff in one way or another. So.
Great, thank you.
All right,
so much.
thank you very much. Appreciate
Take care.
your time and interest and support for all of this. Thank you.
Roger, by the way.
And
Um,
no problem, July 10th.
Yes.
The next item under new business is the Sugar Bush 2024-2025 MOU data report. Joel, will you be presenting?
I will be presenting, yeah.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Laura.
Have a good night.
I'm back.
You need the sharing permission to do, Joel, or are you able?
Yes. Yes, I do need permission. Okay. This all yours. Yeah.
I think you should be good now.
Yes. But it's so much fun.
This heat, it's pretty. Powerful. I'm like, I wish I had a sweater right now.
What's that?
I'm getting blasted by this.
Oh, I can feel it over here now too. It's like.
Not gonna,
it's turned on.
and I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I don't wanna mess with that thing, cause what you do, it's hands off.
Right. We're, I think this is all ready to go.
Did I pass time?
Joshua, I don't know if you want last year you provided a brief history. Is everyone pretty familiar with?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it would, yeah, Leah, let me do that real quickly. So, as laid out in the MOU for the Matter Valley Planning District, the MOU, amongst many things, it identifies data collection. And identifies, so the 1998 MOU identifies a variety of data points that the planning district shall collect and keep track of and make available. Included in that, a subset, or the greatest subset, is Sugar Bush related data. And so there are different MOU numbers that identify things like skier visits and water withdrawals and so on and so forth. Also, so this is annually, usually in June or July, Sugar Bush provides their last year's data point. So that's what this presentation is. This information gets incorporated into the data report in the dashboard, the community dashboard that are completed later in the year, usually around October, November, December, in that timeframe. Maybe not every single data point, but some of them. And it used to sort of be like a data book from Sugar Bush sent to the Matter Valley Planning District, but it's evolved into more of this style presentation that provides a bit more context and understanding for that data. So we really appreciate that. The last thing I want to say is that there is a provision in the MOU where the steering committee has the authority to change some of those data points. So just because the 1998 MOU says these are we're gonna count cars and we're gonna count them on this Tuesday. Some of those things have evolved and changed, and the steering committee has the authority to change them. So there will be a subsequent future meeting where we'll talk about the data and any proposals to evolve the data collection. And we've tracked all the data items that have changed historically. So I just want to provide that context. So we're not trying to do all the things at this particular meeting, but appreciate Joel and Sugar Bush and its data collection efforts and sharing.
Thanks, Joshua. Yeah, my name is Joel Rhodes with planning at Sugar Bush. I was here a couple months ago, shared our first annual social impact report, Be Better Here report. So glad to be back to share more about how this most recent season went and some good data to go along with it. Just high level, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Sugar Bush is, and then Alterra Mountain Company, parent company. And Alterra Mountain Company is a family of 19 mountain destinations throughout North America, and then they administer the Icon Pass, which unlocks over 50 destinations around the world. So Sugar Bush is on the Icon Pass, but also still offers local Sugar Bush specific pass and lift ticket products. Just some general highlights for the season. Overall, there were some ups and downs, but overall it was a great season. Did open a little late. Typically Lincoln Peak opens for the season the weekend before Thanksgiving. It's pretty warm, dry fall, early winter. Challenging for snowmaking, so that got pushed to December 4th. Mount Ellen opened as scheduled the Friday before the Christmas holiday on December 20th. So we we hit our closing target date of the first Sunday of May. So that led to 147 operating days for the season, a little less than some recent years. We're typically around 150 or so, but still pretty solid. Snowfall was great, 281 inches of natural snowfall recorded at on Lincoln Peak. That's above average. Our last 10 years has been around like 217 inches. So good to see a solid snowfall year, especially January, February. That core of the season was phenomenal. Highlight for this year is also the opening of the new Heaven's Gate quad chairlifts that replaced the old triple chair. Opened the Tucker Coffee and Cocktails Cafe in the farmhouse. Sugarbush to date has donated in both cash and in-kind donations over 2 million through a variety of avenues. And some larger highlights this season, there was the Descent to Rise Above campaign, which we're challenging our guests and community members to log their vertical feet. Shooting for 1 billion. We were just over 800 million, so it was still a solid effort. And we did donate the 50,000 plans to NFI Vermont, which is a mental health organization serving individuals, youth, and their families coping with all sorts of emotional challenges that they may be experiencing. Maybe more to come on the Descent to Rise Above next year, version 2.0, we'll see. And then over MLK weekend, we did something new where we, the Icon Pass has holiday blackout dates. And so we provided the opportunity for guests to unlock their, a blackout date on the weekend for $99, and that all of the proceeds went to AALV, which is African Americans living in Vermont. Organization supporting new Americans in Vermont, and Sugarbush has partnered with AALV through the Share Winter program, which helps those who might there are a lot of barriers to downhill skiing and accessing winter recreation. So Share Winter helps to break down those barriers and offer opportunities for free gear, free skiing at Sugarbush. So it's cool to support AALV in another way. One of our best events this spring was probably one of our only sunny Saturdays and weekends of the year was our 3rd annual Pride Weekends. That continues to grow, more community participation and just all around fun weekends. Recently, we were the winner of the a winner of the National Ski Area Association Snowmaking Sustainable Slopes Grant. So providing a little bit of cash funding for continued efficient equipment in our snowmaking operations.
Hey, Joe, before you
Yeah.
leave that slide,
Yeah.
just a question on the $2 million.
Yep.
And cash and kind donations.
Mhm.
Is that all gone into Vermont or Vermont organizations?
A lot of it is local. I can't say that all of it is Vermont. I could look into some of the specifics.
Yeah, no, I'm
but,
just curious. That's a big
a
number.
lot of it actually, it's a lot of it is in kind, and a lot of that going every Harwood School District school is participates in ski program and offering a lot of free skiing. So yeah, there's but yes, a lot of it is local. Try to focus as local as possible.
That's going back to the community.
Yeah, exactly. So we're pretty, and it was an increase over it's noted in this year's written report. It's an increase over last year's donations. So looking at skier visits and operating days, I already mentioned 147 operating days. Skier visits were just shy of 400,000 this year, so a little less than the last 2 seasons. But when you look, further back, 10 years or more, it was still a really strong visitation year. Again, some challenges. We would have anticipated this year to be similar to last year, or even greater. skier visits, but late start, and then we just could not score any sunny days in the spring. So, and when March rolls around, we're really dependent on sun for people to keep skiing into April and May. Snowmaking water, so we report to Vermont DEC on a monthly basis during our snowmaking season on water withdrawals from the Mad River. And this is our cumulative snowmaking water for both Lincoln Peak and Mount Ellen, so just over 250 million gallons of snowmaking water. I like to say borrowed, because most of it is going back into the watershed for snowmaking this season. And then just tracked with that. On the red line there is natural snowfall. As I mentioned earlier, it was above average snowfall year. You can see that snowmaking water use is trending up. Climate change and more variability, freeze thaws, more intense rain events in the winter. But our snowmaking operations continues to become more data driven, and looking at what are the optimal temperatures for making snow, and really focusing on that and sitting out some of those early season, like, gosh, it's below freezing, but we're just going to waste a lot of energy and not put a lot of actual snow on the hill. So there are times where we'll sit it out where other mountains are going harder to hit their opening targets. So it is worth noting, technology like SnowSat on snowcats measuring snow depth and really documenting kind of how trails melt out through the year is driving a more intelligent snowmaking operation. And of course, as I mentioned, snowmaking equipment has gotten a lot more efficient, which really shows up when you look at our annual electricity usage. So this is resort wide, but the bulk of our electricity usage occurs during the season, during snowmaking season. November, December, January are our main snowmaking months. And yeah, we've reduced our electricity usage by about 40% from mid 2000s. And a lot of that is driven by the high efficiency snowmaking equipment.
Can you go back one
Sure.
slide? Yeah, it's pretty wild to look at snowmaking water going up. Well, go to the next slide.
Yes, I know. I was trying to figure out today, actually, like,
Electricity
I
has
should
gone
overlay
down and
this.
then
Yeah.
leveled, so yeah, exactly, find some
Yeah.
correlation between the two, because that's
For
quite
the
astonishing.
electricity per billion gallons.
Yeah.
Exactly, right.
And we're working with Efficiency Vermont on kind of new ways, because we're really we've taken all the low hanging fruit when it comes to, we have very few inefficient snowmaking guns at this point. So there are very few gains that we're going to make in snowmaking, and it's more about how and when we're operating, and really kind of maximizing the efficiency of the system and temperatures. Unfortunately, this year, January was a super efficient month for snowmaking with below freezing temps.
And if my memory serves, when my guess was around 14-15, when that larger purchase happened, or one of the early purchase for the snowmaking equipment, it was a collaboration between the
Yeah,
Vermont Skiers Association and Efficiency Vermont
exactly.
in making that an
Yeah.
available product. So.
Yeah, there was like a great snowmaking roundup at that time where they were scrapping and recycling and not reusing old equipment to guarantee that going forward there was more efficient snowmaking equipment. So Sugar Bush, yeah, really took advantage of that. And not only are the kilowatt hours lower, but our peak demand on the grid is about half of what it used to be. Our peak was back in 2013 was over 7 megawatts, during peak snowmaking season, and this season it was just over 7. So that's 10 megawatts of less demand. So it's a significant decrease in the kind of instantaneous demand on the grid during snowmaking season. Looking more at skier visits. the columns are tracking specific kind of brackets, so looking at 7 to 8,000, 8 to 9, 9 to 10, this is daily skier visits, or over 10. So 7 to 9,000, we'd call, peak days, and then 9 to 9,000 or more, we'd call super peak days. And, even though this is one of like our third or fourth best, skier visit seasons overall, we didn't have any super peak days. So, it goes to show that, the past products, the Icon Pass that are past products that are out there kind of trying to spread the skier visits out. So it's not all on Saturday, it's not all on MLK Day. And yeah, none of our two busiest days of the season, which were, Saturday, February 8th and Sunday, February 9th. So not,
Never on the Saturday,
what's that?
not on the Saturday.
It was on a
Oh, it was
Saturday.
a Saturday.
Yeah, our busiest day was still a Saturday. What we're finding is kind of the shift with the blackout dates, a shift to those non-holiday weekends. So it does make it a little bit challenging because we can't predict exactly what's going to be our busiest day of the season. It's not as straightforward. Last year it was like end of March when we had some of those bigger snowstorms of the season. We ended up getting slams the last weekend of March. So can make the life of a ski area operator a little bit more challenging, but overall, yeah, we're showing that we're operating within a comfortable capacity for what Sugarbush is designed.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
You might not be able to answer it, but of the adult skiers who get Icon passes, I think there's a time where you have to basically select your home mountain, right, for refund purposes or something like that. Like, I'm just wondering how many of the skiers that come during the year kind of were like, Sugarbush is my home mountain.
Oh, interesting.
Icon pass
Yeah.
versus people who
Right.
say other mountains and come for, because Sugarbush is an unlimited one, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah,
the-
it's unlimited.
I'm just curious about kind of what that mix looks like.
Yeah. Altera kind of holds a lot of that data.
I'm
close
sure.
to their chest.
I
We don't-
thought I might be scratching
Yeah.
that surface.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have access to
Yeah,
that
that's
data,
fine.
but
Okay.
just kind of
Thank
anecdotally, it's like, the Boston market is huge, for the Northeast Icon Pass sales, and we know that, a lot of those Boston skiers are coming to Sugarbush, so. Sugarbush, Stratton are the two unlimited, Icon, destinations in the North, US Northeast plus
Yeah.
Tremblant, can't say exactly.
It's okay.
Yeah, it does kind of change the home mountain situation,
Right.
for sure. The next couple slides, data from, we do an annual, survey to all of our staff, both seasonal and year rounds. So when new staff are onboarding, they're required to take this survey through our HRIS system requires it, and then we have a seasonal or year-round survey, which I haven't quite cracked the nut on getting every full-time year-round staff to take the survey, but we're working on it.
Like what percent?
It was about because we had like 753 took the survey. We say typically we have about 1,000, so about a 75% participation rate.
Okay.
Which is good. It's
Which is
better
a lot better than it used to be.
than it used to be. It was a little dip from last year, but we'll work on getting that closer to 100.
What are the color?
And it is kind of hard to see here. So the blue is year round, green is seasonal staff, and then red is combined. So we're looking at percent of employees residing in the Mad River Valley Planning District towns, Warren, Waitsfield, Bayston. And so we have about just over 60% of seasonal staff are residing in the three towns, and about 56-57% of year-round staff residing in valleys or in planning district
And then
towns.
seasonal staff is about 1,000. Or, yeah, what's the breakdown? Like, is it,
About 150 year-round staff,
Okay.
yeah.
so,
What happened in 2015, 2016? Right? It was like almost a 20%. Well, not quite, 17% drop.
Yeah.
on your.
I mean, it's never really recovered. I wasn't here though. What?
Well, I mean, thinking about the timeline, I mean, that could have been,
Staff transition.
well, but also the survey instrument that was being used at the time. As Joel said, historically, it's been a lot harder to get year-round folks, to answer the survey than it is the seasonal.
Yeah.
And what they did about, I don't know, about 8 years ago or so was to include the survey as part of the packet with like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the forms you need to.
You type the paycheck, it tends to get.
Right, instead of doing it at a different time or saying, okay, go online and fill this out,
Yeah.
it was, you have to fill this out now.
Yeah.
So they've got.
Yeah, now that's the same way digitally for
That's
new
what-
staff,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think part of the challenge is it's a lot easier to catch new staff
Yeah.
than it is to catch
Yeah.
existing staff.
So the
And I-
seasonal is probably pretty accurate. or,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, So
Yeah.
the all-time high for seasonal staff living here.
And I mean, that's now that we're seeing an increase of international employees, which we'll kind of get into some, how many employees we're housing in Sugar Bush owned or rented properties. That is, I wouldn't say skewing it, but it's driving that trend.
I think more than Sugar Bush is providing housing
Yeah.
or connection to
Yeah.
housing, which is a more recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tenants returns, I assume also influences that to some degree, because that's also.
Yeah, sure, yeah, and I have those numbers here later as well.
Program to allow people to stay with local hosts in exchange for.
So we also ask about every employee's commuting, broken in commute time, broken in 15-minute intervals. So yeah, the highlight here is that near just shy of 50% are 15 minutes or fewer travel time to the resort. And well, yeah, over 20%. So it's like almost 2/3 or 30 minutes or less. So, even within the 3 towns, like I live in Waitsfield, but it's like 16 minutes for me to drive to Lincoln Peak. So. So if I go to Mount Ellen, it's 12 minutes or something like that. So, yeah. But my office is on the access road. So I fall in the 16-minute category. So yeah, I mean, so really kind of looking at the 30 minutes or less is showing most likely those employees are in the 3 towns. And yeah, we saw an increase over last year in both I think the less than 15 minutes and less than 30 over last year. And again, as more employees are staying in Sugar Bush workforce housing, that helps to drive that trend. This is a new question that we started asking in the survey. So we're gauging employee vehicle ownership, leasing. So we ask, do you own or lease your own vehicle? Again, it's both year-round and seasonal staff. Yeah, so when you look at all employees combined, 2/3, yeah, exactly, own or lease their vehicle. And so part of the reason that we wanted to start looking at this is, as we're, contemplating workforce housing and transit needs, gauging how many cars actually would be needed in at the Rosita's lot. And if only a handful of these employees actually have their own vehicle. So it's just something that we wanted to start tracking. Yeah. And also, yeah, the vehicle ownership declined over last year as we had more international visas, employees on visas and staying in workforce housing. Then we also ask if they moved to the Mad River Valley for their job at Sugar Bush. So on the right, you can see the trends over the last 10 years. And so this year was 13% responded yes. And again, I think, it might be worth considering how we frame that question. Because I think, most see, a lot of the seasonal employees are, yeah, are saying, you know, automatically say yes, because I'm on a visa and I came here to work at Sugar Bush. So yes, I moved to the Mad River Valley. So, yeah. And just tracking this season's workforce housing. So Sugar Bush owned 6 properties and rented 10, which led to 113 bedrooms. That is a mix of singles to quads in a bedroom, for a total of a max capacity of 276 sleeping spaces. That's an increase over 229 last season. We housed 210 employees. Last season, we housed 190 employees. It also just important to note, you know, the average rent is around $500 a month, which is, you know, still falls within the, you know, affordable housing threshold for their income.
So what, just remind me again, what percentage is that? What's the 210? What's your total? What percentage is that?
Oh, how many employees do we have? Or
Yeah, what's your?
So are these only focused on seasonal? Or does this also include a portion of your?
it would be a portion of year round to our, it's not, it's, you know, we're talking a handful, like it does, you know,
Yeah.
20. In summer, we're not housing very many, but there are year round staff who take
And-
advantage of employee housing.
A bunch of year-round staff didn't own their own car, right? So
Yeah,
they're up there biking or okay, close to work.
yeah.
So what's the percentage?
Of total staff or so
20%.
20%, yeah. Yeah. We have about 1,000, just over 1,000. At peak, it fluctuates through the season, but kind of
Yeah,
at
we
peak.
call it roughly.
Yeah, 1,000 is kind of the best number.
Good.
And then tenants for turns, which we talked briefly about. So this is a program that the planning district actually kind of led the development and supported launch. This was the 8th season of the Tenants for Turns program, and it was the first of its kind in the East. And so, yeah, property owners, landlords can choose to enroll. There are a couple of different kind of incentives, you know, pass or like 10 lift tickets, and a couple of options for you know, added benefit to hosting employees. So looking at this season, we had 28 landlords enrolled, a total of 14 properties, which is down a little bit from last year, but some of those properties were actually larger. And so still similar to last year, it's 33 employees. Last year we housed 34, which was the second largest. 2019, 2020 was the biggest for the Tenants for Turns program. So actually, when then you include the Tenants for Turns program, a total of 243 employees were housed. So the previous slide, the 210 were through Sugar Bush managed, whether owned or rented, and then 33. So then 243 employees were housed.
24.3.
Yeah. When you include tenant returns, yeah.
I can do that math.
Yeah.
Look at that math skills.
Make it easy for you, yeah.
Out of curiosity, do you have a lot more slides to go through?
No, I'm almost done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies for.
Yeah, no worries. And then just, yeah, those were the major data points. There's a little bit more information, you know, in the written report. And then just quick look ahead to the summer, full slate of weddings and corporate events. Working on currently replacing the Tommy's Toy surface lift with a carpet. Actually, it'll be a tunnel covered surface lift. So that'll be it'll actually run and provide a nice learning area for beginners and adaptive programs. And a regraded beginner learning area too. So that'll be a really nice addition to Mount Ellen. Also in the planning phase of for permitting the Northridge lift replacements. That's in the works, but still has a ways to go. Just wanted to highlight this Sugar Bush Golf Club. Was actually ranked in the Vermont's top 15 courses last year. So it was a good recognition for the Sugar Bush Golf Club. Yeah, they had, a solid summer last year. Hopefully we have dry weather because the rain really hinders the number of golf rounds. But other activities this summer, summer camps, hiking, disc golf. We've pared down our scenic lift rides. We're actually only doing 4th of July and community weekend over Indigenous Peoples' Day weekends. So we are second summer in a row without lift served mountain biking. Our intention is to bring it back, but for now, that program's paused. Usual slate of events, lots of music, Big Deck Tuesdays, Friday at Hogan's at the golf club, music in the courtyard, and you can see everything on the events calendar.
Quickly, sorry, I missed that, because it impacts me, what's the approximate timeline on the Northridge chair replacement?
If everything goes as we hope and funding Alterra, approves capital for it and permits in hand, next summer is what we're shooting for. Fingers crossed. There's a lot that needs to be done. Everyone is crossing their fingers.
Are there any other questions for Joel?
Joel,
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Joel. You're welcome.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the member roundtable. Maybe I'll start with Eric. Are you still with us? Eric Friedman?
Yes, I am.
Do you mind kicking us off on the member roundtable?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Pretty busy at the chamber these days. The rec hub is really getting going. People are actually using it, which is awesome. And so it's interesting to look at all the numbers and to hear from Laura about the grant and all of that but it's just awesome to see it actually being used. People are using the trailhead and discovering it. It was nice to see people using it last Saturday to carpool to go to No Kings rallies and going down there and oh my God, this is so beautiful down here, and they discovered it. And it's when you get people down there, they're really impressed with it, and they're impressed with the bathroom facilities and the welcome center, and it's starting to build momentum, which is great. So just anecdotal sorts of things. Working really hard with the chamber business members to try to promote the Valley generally going forward, and specifically this summer. We built a whole toolkit of ways to encourage businesses to collaborate with one another, and that's been going really well. And we're doing some marketing workshops on a monthly basis that are terrific. And we have been having a lot of success with our tailgate talks on social media. How many have you have seen them? All right.
I gotta step up my game here. What are
Yeah,
your
if you
What
go
are
to
your
the
tailgate
if you go to the Chamber's YouTube channel, you can binge them. There's about 20 of them.
Rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah. But we're trying, that's really going well, and it's really interesting, and it's getting a lot of traction, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to tell the stories of the interesting people in the community. So that the Stewart MRV program is just crushing it. We're doing really, really well. Tom's doing an amazing job this year. His big problem that he has is every time he goes to any of the 28 sites, there's no garbage there. There's literally nothing there. And the whole idea, if you take care of a place, people are a lot less inclined to sully it, is really working. So that's really awesome. We had near 100% return rate on all of the volunteers, and there's over 30 of them. And there's free time involved now, where we actually decided to have a work day down on Bridge Street last week, and 8 people showed up for a couple hours. And if you go down along the river where the riprap was, we did a coordinated effort with the Knotweed folks and the Conservation Commission in Waitsfield and Friends of the Mad River, and made sure it was all good to do and everyone was in agreement. And we took down a lot of the saplings that were growing in the riprap along the river. And it looks great down there. The view was getting really diminished, and you couldn't quite see the bridge in a lot of places anymore. And it looks great. And it went so well, they're actually going to be doing another project next week at Warren Falls. One of the things we're noticing is that the budget cuts have impacted the Forest Service. They're not able to weed whack and maintain the parking lot as much as they would normally like to. Stewart MRV is picking up the slack, and they're very appreciative of that. And yeah, it's unfortunate to see, in real time, what these federal employees are going through, because it's not great, and it's sort of shocking, how he watches what he says, and is very, very conscious about, not getting himself into trouble. So it's kind of a weird thing. But we're really pleased with that. And the legislative session, we've been very involved in the legislative efforts and throughout the session. And it's been an interesting ride, and continuing to build our relationships with our local reps and our senators, and doing what we do. So that's what's going on with us.
Thank you very much, Eric. I also see Kaylee's I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Is it Kaylee or Callie? Kaylee?
It is Kaylee, and I am
Kaylee,
here.
I'm so sorry, Kaylee. I
it's
should
fine.
know. Would you mind giving us does everyone know Kaylee from Warren Select Board?
Mhm.
I'm on the Warren Select Board. This is my first Mad River PD meeting, so I'm excited. It's been
Kaylee.
great so far. Hi, Dave.
Welcome.
Welcome, great to have you around the table. Around the table, if I was to go around the table, there's Paul Quinlan from Facein PC, Dave Babbitt Klein.
Jonathan Ersprung from Waitsfield Planning Commission.
Chuck Martell, Facein Select Board.
Dan Roddick, Warren PC.
Joel Rhodes, Sugar Bush. Normally Jim Westall's here too.
Yeah,
Josh Schwartz.
Jay Robinson.
great.
So thank you. What's going on with the Warren Select Board?
Well, we're still working on the town garage and trying to understand the costs of that and think through bond costs in the fall. We do have a new pavilion by the town hall, which is lovely, and everyone should go check it out, especially if you're around for the 4th of July weekend. I guess it's a weekend, it's Friday. We have the 4th of July coming up, of course, so we've been doing a lot of planning around that and approvals for that. Big things on our dockets for this summer include the land use regulations, passing those, as well as the short-term rental ordinance that we've been working on. And then, as noted earlier, kind of touched on the discussion we had last week about the Route 100 active transportation grant opportunity, and kind of approving that first phase of the project if that happens. So that's kind of the big rocks that we are carrying at the moment.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Paul?
Yes, sir. We had our regularly scheduled planning commission meeting on the 9th of June, and we finally approved forwarding our revisions list or land use regulations revisions list to the select board. Beginning the process of getting the select board to take a look at it and doing the announcing it and taking public comment and moving forward with those revisions. We spent a little bit of time at that meeting revisiting, our revision to the, ADU, section of our LRUs. Just tweaking, square footage and percentages and, so it was, and not unanimous, what we're sending to the select board. There's a huge difference of opinion on, how to proceed with ADUs, but that's, we're advisory, so we're advising, we'll see where that goes. We did not revisit trails, which was good. And, so yeah, that was good to get that. It was good to get that done and dusted. It only took a year. So, now we're on to the town plan. So.
Thank you.
I can go next. Our recent meeting at the Waitsfield Select Board, we reviewed our financial situation and our budget, the past year and our forecast, and things are looking pretty good. We have a $55,000 positive balance. We discussed with several farmers who were in attendance the Meadow Road Bridge, which we're waiting another inspection on. And we're looking at more funding opportunities to try and replace that if it fails, or possibly, as you might have read in the paper, look at a temporary bridge solution. So that they don't have to go all the way through Moortown. We have been dealing with, there were a lot of flood instances in Waitsfield, about a month ago, right? 3 weeks ago. And so there were some folks with some concerns about culverts failing and future instances of that happening again. And so the road crew has been amazing, fixing all that up, and we're continuing to work to try and get funding for the private culverts that failed as well. And then we had an interesting presentation from Aaron Shea about possible workforce housing proposal on town land next to the gravel pit, which we're gonna look into and find out more about. Basically try and develop that land into kind of middle of the road workforce housing.
Isn't there something been percolating there for a while, wasn't there?
There was an article last year as well, but this is, go back to the well.
So from the Waitsfield Planning Commission, at some point in the future, I won't be just getting updates about the Irisville master plan, but that's not today. Although I will say, one thing we were really excited about is this, the Vermont Local Level Outdoor Recreation Economic Impact Project that Josh spoke about earlier.
That's an acronym though?
Valori.
Valori.
Yeah.
The whole area.
Yeah.
And Paul, by the way, you used 2 acronyms in your description, but I did not call it.
Oh, yeah, no.
I think I was acting free.
So, I am really excited about that impact project. I think that's gonna be a really fantastic. I understand the kickoff meeting for that is next week, I think. So
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing how that shapes up, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, our primary focus remains the master planning project, and our big update, which I hope to have more to say about today, but I don't, is we were able to meet with Shannon Morrison from the A&R Wetlands at the end of May, and had a really good conversation. Following that, we met again, the steering committee, and decided that we wanted to try to encourage Shannon to give us more concrete guidance about what steps we as a municipality could take to try to at least streamline the process of getting the master plan into their, I don't know what the right word is, but sort of their system to help us to get approvals for the future development a little bit easier. Unfortunately, we haven't heard back yet. We did have some follow-up outreach. And we heard that she hadn't had a chance to sort of fully review it, so we're hoping that we'll hear more in the coming week. Be great if we heard this week, tomorrow or Monday, so we could speak about it at our next meeting, but that's sort of the current status. And And that is leading to our hopeful next step, which is to apply for a second grant. The master planning grants are available, that the grant that we have is available for sort of 2 tranches. And our hope is to use a second grant to do some further analysis of the wetland situation, and primarily, if possible, if we're able to use the grant funds for this purpose, more hydrological study about how the Irisville wetland water impacts potential flooding in the Mad River, so that we can have a better sense of whether increased development in Irisville would in fact have an impact downstream on flood risk, or if they're actually not as hydrologically related as that. So no one really knows the answer to that question currently, and we're hoping to do a little bit of investigation to find out. That's it.
All right, next up.
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah, you may all recall last couple of months, I was talking about, we're looking for some additional personnel. One of them was an additional road crew member. We still have not had any application. Well, let me rephrase that. We've had applications through places like Indeed, but people aren't really serious about the job offering. They filling out, applications from Arizona and willing to move Vermont, so you press them a little bit and then, we're not getting anything. So, however, that's the bad news. The good news is, for those of you who know Mike Quinville, he came back for the summer, which he was not going to do, and he's doing our roadside mowing. So we've got at least roadside mowing covered for this summer. But we're still looking for somebody to fill that 4th road crew position. So if you know of anybody, let me know. The other personnel issue too is that we're still looking for the part-time town clerk. So if anyone is interested in that position as well, we're still looking for that, to fill that. The only other thing is we're doing a lot of road work. Lake Wakefield, we got hit on Tucker Hill Road pretty hard that last rain event. And we're going back there next week to replace like 7 culverts. That road washed out pretty badly, so a lot of our time on the road crew is being spent up there. It has been a couple of weeks ago and now will be again. And then we're finally wrapping up, as a matter of fact, just yesterday, Dunbar Hill Road, which was the hardest hit of our roads last year in the flood. And we had to bring a private contractor in to do that work for us because we just didn't have time with our own road crew. So that was about $90,000, the winning bid to do that, but we're hoping FEMA will cover that. So, but that road is complete now. I took a ride up there today and all the stone lining is done, and the grader was up, Tony was up there with the grader doing his thing, finishing off the road work, so that one is pretty much wrapped up. So we should be getting some FEMA money from that as well. That was the last step in completing that program. So that's it, road work, and we need some more people.
Oh, and shout out, I was gonna mention it too, completed the work, some of the pond work up at Boyce Hill. We were
Oh.
there the other day.
Yes,
So if you guys haven't been up and jumped in the little pond up at Boyce Hill, you should do so. There's a nice beautiful rock walkway down. You don't have to stumble over roots and rocks and mud and whatnot, so that's pretty damn cool. It's a great place.
yeah. And that was thanks to the Conservation Commission and the subcommittee at Boyce Hill subcommittee to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Keeps getting better and better up there.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. We don't have Christian today, huh? No, from the
No, no
CVRPC.
CVRPC.
So I guess that means,
And anything else from Sugarbush?
I think I spoke enough.
I mean, I assumed, but maybe there was something else burning then.
No,
you don't have anything else?
I don't have anything.
All right, let's see, Warren PC, we had a fun, honestly, we had kind of a fun meeting last week, because Isaiah Haviland came and spoke to us about, concepts for, if our garage, I've talked about this before, but if the garage bond that Kim had mentioned passes, that we would have a site in the village for housing. And the select board is really, is really so much on their plate. that, the PC is trying to look into, well, what can we do? Is there something we can, some ways we can advance housing in the meantime? So Keziah came and gave kind of an overview and started kicking off our exploratory, what would that mean? You know, what would that, and both Joshua and Sam have also expressed interest in assisting, with housing discussions as things progress. What else was interesting? You know, across from East One Community Market, there's a community group that's purchased what used to be the, or not has purchased, but is exploring purchasing together with Yes Tomorrow, that land, that field right opposite East One Community Market. And,
Which way, west, where all the,
like if you were to look, if you're walking in the front door, it's opposite. On the, exactly, like if you walk out the front door of East One Community Market, look straight ahead.
Across the
It's
gap.
right across.
to north,
right-
yeah,
Yeah, right, that's a better way to put it, right across Roxbury Mountain Road.
okay, got it.
And Dan Riker and Britton Rogers came in and told us a little bit about the project. It was really, I mean, what was exciting to us, I think, as a planning commission, is they were like, they wanted to do a visioning. They were open to the idea. I thought it would be great to do a community visioning exercise for what, you know, what is the community, you know, not to say that assuming the sale goes through Yes Tomorrow, I think will own the land. So it's not like, you know, they can take what we say, what the community says or not, but at least they seem interested in community ideas, which is wonderful. And, you know, and so we're excited about that. And then the last little bit that's also was kind of fun and exciting is a couple of the younger funner members of the planning commission. In the absence of the roundup, they have decided to do something called the Warren Wind Down. So, you know, to have a kind of a community gathering, you know, celebrate the new gazebo and do a community building sort of exercise there. So that's, it was a fun meeting. You
And
know.
that'll be Wednesdays?
I think it's a one-time, it's gonna be a one-time event, assuming they're presenting to the select board. So of course, the select board has to say it's a good idea, but, it just is a community building exercise to try to bring us all together, cause you know, we just, as we talked about.
Is there wine involved in the wine down?
Yeah, and just quickly on that, the Waitsfield Select Board was disappointed that, things didn't go as kind of advertised to us week before the first round was supposed to happen, and then our meeting was that week before as well, and
And then all the finger pointing on front.
it was a little finger pointing.
Oh, I missed that. I don't, but it wasn't, we weren't trying to compete. It actually really doesn't have inspiration from
Yeah,
Waitsfield.
no.
Why not do
Well,
something?
thank you for doing
Go
it,
back
Why
and
not
binge
do so?
read front
because
porch
it
four.
doesn't seem like it's happening anymore.
Why not do something?
And thankfully, we Sugarbush on Tuesdays doing the
Exact at Mount Ellen.
and Mount River Glen, I believe, on Thursdays.
Mad River's Wednesday, I was going through this.
It's Mad River on Wednesday.
Tuesdays, you got Lawson's and Mount Ellen. Wednesdays, Mad River Glen. Thursdays, Mad River Barn
Oh,
for live music. Friday, Hogan's.
Hogan's.
And there's the back porch and the first of the
Oh,
back
yeah.
porch series, which is once a month, I believe on Wednesdays. At Flatbread at Monroe.
Yes, and then this Friday is music at Afterthought. Also, this Friday is a solstice party, 10-year anniversary of Sip of Sunshine. With music at Lawson's. I went to Lawson's last night for a beer pairing thing, it was fantastic.
Yep, fifth quarter.
Yeah, this quarter's meathead on. I think it was
I
fantastic.
gotta, dude, I can get out of the house more.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, you can have a busy social calendar and not leave the.
Yeah.
The valley.
Yeah.
I teased my buddy last night, he goes, I'm like, you've never been to Tillerman? He goes, why would I ever leave the valley?
Looks like Eric has something to say.
Yes, and all of the things that you're mentioning are available on the community calendar. Look at it, and it's very, very well used, and there is a lot going on here.
Oh, and I just wanted to say, we got huge compliments for the new Steward porta potty at the Warren softball fields, so.
At which one?
At the Warren softball field,
Oh, awesome, great.
yeah,
Boy, new porta potty.
yep, people don't have to run
The river.
100 yards, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all for the updates. The last item on the agenda is upcoming meeting schedule.
Yeah.
So
So our next meeting
Yeah.
is scheduled for July 17th, third Thursday of the month. We'll anticipating having somebody come and share about the Flood Safety Act, Act 121. A woman by the name of Allison Spazic with the Lake Champlain Sea Grant Program. And potentially, I'm not sure if it's gonna happen this meeting or a subsequent one, the Friends of Mad River providing an update on a variety of the different programs that they're engaged in. So that's the July meeting, and then August.
August, we decide, well, I think the executive committee's decided it would be a good idea not to meet, to take August off.
Traditionally skipping on.
Traditionally skipping August, it does, but
Keep the tradition.
third
alive,
week,
yeah.
I don't think many people, or I expect a lot of people will be away. Expect I might be away. So.
I take a very
yeah.
European approach and just disappear for the last 2 weeks.
Any other business? No? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, we have a motion second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any? All right, the meeting is adjourned.
Dying to do this all day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Aaron.
Look at that thing.